My sister Jessica stood in the foyer of her $3.2 million mansion and laughed at my shoes. She swirled her champagne and told me I would never understand what true luxury feels like. She told me to enjoy the free food because it was more than my rent budget for a month. I simply smiled and ate a macaron. 3 days later, she drove through the gates of my private estate. She walked through my front door. Her smile vanished instantly. She dropped her limited edition Chanel bag, and it hit the floor with a heavy thud. Then she started screaming for our mother to come help her because she could not believe what she was seeing. Before I reveal exactly how I humbled my arrogant family without raising my voice, let me know in the comments if you have ever been the black sheep of your family. Hit like and subscribe if you are ready to see the underdog win. Driving to Greenwich, Connecticut usually feels like entering a different country. The lawns are manicured to the millimeter, and the air smells like old money and quiet judgment. I was behind the wheel of my 2015 Honda Civic. The silver paint was peeling slightly on the bumper, and the air conditioning made a rattling noise when I turned it up past level 2. I could have driven my other car, the one with the Italian leather seats and the twin turbo engine. But today was not about me. It was about Jessica. It was her housewarming party, and I needed to play my role perfectly. The role of Chloe, the struggling freelancer, the failure, the charity case. I pulled up to the wrought iron gates of the Oaks, the newest gated community in Greenwich. The security guard stepped out of his booth. He looked at my Honda like it was a contagious disease. He did not ask for my name. He just pointed a gloved hand toward the service entrance down the road. I rolled down my window. "I am here for the Vance housewarming party," I said. My voice was calm. The guard laughed. He actually laughed. "Deliveries are at the back entrance, miss. Construction crews park on the street. Residents do not want to see this kind of vehicle in the main driveway. I am not a delivery driver. I am the sister of the homeowner. Chloe Vance. Check the list." He sighed like I was asking him to solve a calculus equation. He took his time picking up his clipboard. He scanned it slowly. Then he scanned it again. He picked up his radio and called the main house. I sat there for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of idling while a line of Range Rovers and Porsches honked behind me. I saw the guard wave them through the other lane while I sat there burning gas. Finally, he tapped on my window. "They said to let you in, but park on the side. Do not block the view of the fountain." I drove through. I did not get angry. I did not yell. I just noted the name on his badge. I also noted that the security firm guarding this community was a subsidiary of a company I was currently in the process of acquiring. That was a detail for later. I parked my Civic next to a lineup of G-Wagons and Teslas. I stepped out and looked up at Jessica and Marcus' dream house. To the untrained eye, it was magnificent. A colonial revival monster with white pillars and massive windows. It screamed success. It screamed, "We have made it." But I do not have an untrained eye. I see assets and liabilities. I see profit margins and bad investments. I walked up the driveway and I started counting the red flags. The house was a spec home. It was built by a developer who wanted to maximize profit by cutting corners. From the driveway, I could see the roof shingles were asphalt, not slate. On a $3 million home in Greenwich, that is a sin. I saw the spacing between the windows on the second floor was uneven. I walked up the front steps. They were made of limestone veneer, not solid stone. One heavy winter and they would crack. I reached the massive oak front door. It looked solid, but when I knocked, it sounded hollow. The door swung open. Jessica was standing there. She looked perfect. She was wearing a silk dress that cost more than my first car. Her hair was blown out to perfection. Behind her, the foyer was blindingly bright. "Chloe, you actually made it," Jessica said. Her voice was high and sweet, but her eyes were scanning me from head to toe. She lingered on my shoes. "They were comfortable flats I bought on sale 3 years ago. I thought you might get lost, or that your car might break down on the highway. Marcus was taking bets on whether we would have to call AAA for you." "Happy housewarming, Jessica. The house is impressive," I said. I stepped inside. The foyer was dominated by a chandelier that looked like a cascading waterfall of crystals. "Do you like it?" Jessica asked, pointing up. "It is custom made. $12,000. Marcus insisted we get the best. And the floors. Look at the floors, Chloe. Imported Italian marble. $40 a square foot. Be careful not to scuff them with your shoes. I looked at the floor. It was polished to a mirror shine, but I noticed the grout lines. They were too thick. Whoever laid this expensive marble was an amateur. They had rushed the job to meet the closing date. "It is beautiful, Jessica," I said. Marcus walked in from the living room, my brother-in-law. He was holding a glass of scotch and wearing a suit that was too tight in the shoulders. He worked as a director for a mid-level hedge fund. He walked with the swagger of a man who owned the world, but I knew the truth. I knew because I read the public records on this property 2 hours ago. They bought this house for $3.2 million, but they did not put 20% down. They did not even put 10% down. They took out an adjustable rate mortgage with a teaser rate of 2% for the first year. After that, the rate would jump to 7%. They had leveraged everything. The down payment was likely a loan from his parents. This house was not an asset. It was a ticking time bomb. Marcus clapped a hand on my shoulder. It was heavy and condescending. "Glad you could make it, Chloe. Grab a drink. The champagne is Dom Perignon. Try not to spill it. It costs $300 a bottle. I know you are used to the box stuff, but try to appreciate the quality." I took a glass. "Thank you, Marcus. Congratulations on the purchase. The market is volatile right now." It was a bold move. He laughed, a loud barking sound. "Volatile for people who do not know the game, Chloe. Real estate in Greenwich only goes up. This house is already worth 10% more than we paid last week. That is how wealth works. You buy, you hold, you profit. Maybe one day when you get a real job, you will understand." I took a sip of the champagne. It was warm. I walked past them into the living room. The crown molding had a gap in the corner where the wood had shrunk. The paint around the light switches was already showing fingerprints because they used a cheap matte finish instead of eggshell. I sat down on a velvet sofa that looked like it belonged in a museum. It was stiff and uncomfortable. My mother, Linda, came rushing over. She was holding a napkin like a weapon. "Chloe," she hissed, "why did you park that car in the driveway? The neighbors are watching. Move it to the street. Now." I looked at my mother. She was wearing pearls and anxiety. She was terrified that someone would find out her youngest daughter was not successful. "The valet said the street is full, Mom. We'll find a spot, down the block, walk back. Just get that eyesore out of the frame. We are taking family photos in 20 minutes, and I do not want a Honda Civic in the background of Jessica Big Day." I stood up. I did not argue. I put my warm champagne down on a coaster. "Okay, Mom, I will move the car." I walked back out the front door. I walked past the hollow columns and the fake stone steps. I got into my car and moved it 3 blocks away. I walked back in the cold. As I walked, I pulled out my phone. I checked my portfolio. My real estate holding company had just closed a deal on a commercial complex in downtown Stamford. Net profit for this quarter was $4.5 million. I put my phone away and put my smile back on. I was ready for the rest of the night. I was ready to be the failure they needed me to be, because the higher they built their pedestal, the harder they would fall when I kicked it out from under them, and I had my steel-toed boots on. The dining room was colder than the air outside. We sat around a table made of reclaimed mahogany that Marcus claimed cost $15,000. It was set for 12 people, but there were only 5 of us. My sister Jessica, her husband Marcus, my parents Thomas and Linda, and me. I was seated at the far end of the table opposite Jessica. It felt less like a family dinner and more like a corporate merger meeting where I was the asset being liquidated. The catering staff moved silently around us, pouring vintage wine into crystal glasses. I noticed the caterers were from a mid-range company in Stamford, not the high-end New York firm Jessica had bragged about on Instagram. Another cut corner. Another facade. My father stood up. He held his wine glass by the stem, swirling the red liquid. He looked around the room, his eyes lingering on the coffered ceiling and the silk drapes. He did not look at me. He looked at the house. He was in love with the drywall and the crown molding. "A toast," my father said. His voice boomed off the empty walls. "To Jessica and Marcus, for finally putting the Vance name on the map, for showing us all what hard work and ambition actually look like." He took a sip and then lowered his glass just enough to look at me. "It is a relief," he continued, "to see that at least one of my children has made something of herself, To know that all those years of private school tuition were not completely wasted. He sat down. The clinking of his silverware against the china was the only sound in the room for 10 seconds. I carefully cut a piece of the dry chicken on my plate. I did not look up. I did not flinch. I had heard this speech before in different variations. Usually it was delivered at Christmas or Thanksgiving. Today it was just the appetizer. My mother Linda leaned forward. She was vibrating with the need to pile on. It was her favorite sport. If my father was the hammer, my mother was the chisel. She liked to find the cracks and work them until they split open. "Did you see the master bathroom, Chloe?" she asked. Her voice was deceptively light. I nodded. "It is very spacious, Mom." "Spacious." She let out a sharp laugh. "It is 500 square feet, Chloe. That bathroom is bigger than that entire shoebox you live in over in Queens. What is the square footage of your studio again?" 300, maybe 350. 400, I said quietly. 400. She repeated the number like it was a dirty word. 400 square feet at 31 years old. She turned to Jessica, shaking her head. "I worry about her, Jessica. I really do. You have 5 bedrooms here, 4 bathrooms, a 3-car garage, and your sister is living in a basement in Queens, listening to the subway rumble overhead every 10 minutes. It is embarrassing. When my friends at the country club ask what Chloe is doing, I have to invent things. I tell them she is in between projects. I cannot tell them she is a freelancer writing blogs for pennies." I took a sip of water. I did not tell her that the blog I wrote for was a financial strategy newsletter with 40,000 subscribers paying $50 a month. I did not tell her that the studio in Queens was just an address I used for mail. I did not tell her that I owned the entire pre-war building that studio was located in, along with 2 others on the same block. I just swallowed the water. It was room temperature. "You should stay here tonight, Chloe," my mother continued, "just to see what it feels like to sleep in a house that doesn't smell like other people's cooking. It might inspire you. Maybe if you see what success looks like, you will stop playing artist and get a real job." "I am fine, Mom. My lease is secure." "Secure," Marcus chimed in. He had finished his first glass of wine and was pouring a second. He did not offer to pour any for me. "Nothing is secure when you are living paycheck to paycheck, Chloe." He leaned back in his chair, spreading his arms. The fabric of his jacket strained against his chest. He looked at me with the heavy-lidded gaze of a man who believes his own hype. "I saw your car outside before you moved it." "That Civic. What is that, a 2015? "It gets me from point A to point B," I said. Marcus chuckled. "It sounds like a lawnmower." I heard the exhaust from the porch. "Look, I know things are tight for you. If you need a loan to fix it up or maybe put a down payment on something that doesn't threaten the ozone layer, let me know." He paused for effect, looking at Jessica and smiling. "I can write you a personal loan. Obviously, I have to charge interest. I am a finance guy, Chloe. I cannot just give money away. But I will give you a family rate. Let us say 12%. That is better than you will get with your credit score, I assume." 12%. The market rate for a personal loan with excellent credit was currently 7%. He was trying to gouge me. He was trying to make a profit off his own sister-in-law while pretending to be a savior. I looked at his hand as he gestured. He was wearing a Patek Philippe Nautilus. The blue dial caught the light from the chandelier. It was a beautiful watch. It retailed for over $100,000 on the gray market. But as he moved his wrist, I saw the clasp. There was a tiny red sticker on the underside of the deployment buckle. It was the inventory tag for Chronos Lease, a luxury watch rental company in Manhattan. I knew that sticker because I had almost acquired Chronos Lease last year before deciding their margins were too thin. Marcus was renting that watch. He was paying probably $2,000 a month to wear a timepiece he could never afford to buy. "That is generous of you, Marcus," I said. My voice was flat. "But I think I can manage my own finances." He scoffed. "Manage. That is a strong word for what you do, Chloe. Surviving is not managing. Look around you. This is managing. This is what happens when you make smart moves, when you marry up, when you understand how the world works." He tapped the face of his rented watch. "Time is money, Chloe, and you are wasting both. You are 31. No husband, no assets, no future. You are the cautionary tale we will tell our kids about. Jessica laughed. It was a cruel sound. "Don't be mean, Marcus," she said, touching his arm. "She is trying. Not everyone is cut out for this life. Some people are just destined to be average." She looked at me across the flowers. "We are just trying to help you, Chloe. We want you to want more for yourself. We are tired of making excuses for you." I looked at the three of them, my father, the disappointed patriarch, my mother, the social climber, my sister and brother-in-law, the imposters. They sat there in their rented glory, surrounded by debt-eating dry chicken and thinking they were royalty. They wanted me to cry. They wanted me to throw my napkin down and storm out so they could talk about how unstable I was. They wanted a reaction. I did not give them one. I picked up my fork and took another bite of the chicken. "This is delicious, Jessica," I said. "Thank you for inviting me." The silence that followed was heavy with their frustration. They had thrown their best darts and I hadn't even blinked. But the night was not over. They were just reloading. And I was counting every word, every insult, every number, storing them away for the moment the bill would come due. The dinner plates had been cleared away by the silent catering staff. The conversation had lulled into a comfortable rhythm of self-congratulation between my father and Marcus. They were discussing capital gains tax and pretending to understand the nuances of the latest federal rate hike. Jessica stood up and smoothed down her silk dress. She caught my eye and tilted her head toward the hallway. It was a subtle gesture, a command dressed up as an invitation. "Chloe, come help me with the dessert wine," she said. I knew there was no dessert wine to open. The caterers were handling everything. This was the ambush. I followed her out of the dining room. We walked down the hallway past a series of abstract paintings that I knew she bought at a chain furniture store for $200 each, but told everyone were commissioned pieces. She stopped in front of a heavy door that led to the basement stairs. She turned to face me. The lighting in the hallway was dim, designed to hide imperfections, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. She reached out and took my hands. Her palms were soft. They were the hands of a woman who had never scrubbed a floor or worried about a utility bill. "Chloe, we need to talk," she said. Her voice dropped to a whisper, a conspiratorial tone that made my skin crawl. "Marcus and I have been talking. We are really worried about you. Mom says your lease in Queens is up next month, and with the rent prices skyrocketing, we know you are probably panicking." I was not panicking. My lease was not up. I owned the building. But I let her continue. "I am fine, Jessica," I said. "No, you are not." She squeezed my hands tighter. "Stop being proud, Chloe. Pride does not pay the bills. Look, we want to help you. We have a proposition." She gestured toward the door behind her. "The basement door. You know we have that finished suite downstairs. It has its own bathroom. It is small, but it is clean. And it is inside this house. A $3 million house, Chloe." I waited. I knew the punchline was coming. "We are planning to start a family soon," Jessica said. A shadow of a smile played on her lips. "And this house is huge. Keeping it clean is going to be a nightmare. We were going to hire a housekeeping service and a nanny eventually. But then Marcus said, 'Why give that money to strangers when we can keep it in the family?'" She paused, waiting for me to thank her. "Here is the deal. You move in here, into the basement suite. You live rent-free, no utility bills, no internet costs. You eat our food. In exchange, you help out. You keep the house tidy. You do the laundry. You cook dinner on weeknights because Marcus likes a hot meal when he gets home from the city. And when we have a baby, you help raise it." She smiled brighter now. "We will call you the au pair. It sounds professional. It explains why you are living here to the neighbors. You will be part of the household staff, but you are also family. It is perfect." I looked at her. I did the math in my head instantly. The going rate for a live-in housekeeper and nanny in Greenwich, Connecticut was roughly $65,000 a year, plus benefits. The rent for a basement studio in this area was maybe $1,800 a month. She was offering me value of roughly $21,000 a year in rent and food in exchange for labor worth $65,000. She was trying to profit $44,000 a year off her own sister. It was exploitation wrapped in a bow of charity. And the basement. I knew about the basement. I had seen the inspection report. It had a radon issue and a history of water intrusion during heavy rains. It was not a sweet. It was a health hazard. And the salary? I asked calmly. Jessica laughed. A sharp, incredulous sound. Salary. Chloe, you are getting free rent in a multi-million-dollar estate. You are getting food. You are getting a lifestyle you could never afford on your own. Why would we pay you a salary on top of that? Think of the exposure. You will be living with successful people. You might learn something. So you want me to be an indentured servant, I said. Jessica dropped my hands. Her face hardened. Do not be dramatic. We are offering you a lifeline. You are drowning, Chloe. You are 31 and you have nothing. This is your chance to be useful, to be part of something successful instead of just watching from the sidelines. I looked at the basement door, then I looked at Jessica. I felt a strange sense of calm. This was it. This was the moment they officially stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a resource to be consumed. I smiled. It was a genuine smile, because I knew something she did not. Thank you for the offer, Jessica, I said. It is very revealing. I took a step back. But I have to decline. She blinked. Excuse me. I said no. Actually, the timing is funny. I am moving next week too. Jessica stared at me. Her mouth opened slightly. Moving. Moving where? Another closet in Queens. Did you find a roommate to split the rent? No, I said. I bought a place. I let the words hang in the air. I bought a place. It was a simple sentence, but in this hallway it sounded like a gunshot. Jessica stared at me for 3 seconds. Then she started to laugh. It started as a giggle and turned into a full-blown cackle. She leaned against the wall, clutching her stomach. You bought a place? Oh my God. Chloe, stop. You cannot even afford to fix your car. What did you buy? A mobile home. A shed in someone's backyard. Did you get approved for a loan? Who co-signed for you? Dad certainly didn't. I waited for her to finish. I am having a housewarming party next Sunday, I said. Just a small gathering, tea and light refreshments. I would love for you and Marcus and Mom and Dad to come. Consider it a return of hospitality. Jessica wiped a tear of laughter from her eye. Oh, we are definitely coming. I have to see this. I have to see what Chloe Vance calls a house. This is going to be the comedy event of the year. Where is it? Bridgeport, New Haven. I reached into my purse. I pulled out 4 envelopes. They were made of thick, cream-colored cardstock, the kind that costs $5 per sheet. I had them embossed with gold leaf. I handed them to her. Here is the address. Sunday at 4. Don't be late. Jessica snatched the envelopes. She didn't even look at the address. She just tucked them under her arm like they were junk mail. Okay, Chloe, we will be there. We will come see your little project, but the offer for the basement stands. When you realize you cannot pay the mortgage on whatever shack you bought, the door is open, but only for the basement. She turned around and walked back toward the dining room. I followed her. She burst into the room waving the envelopes. You guys will not believe this, she announced to the table. Chloe bought a house. Marcus choked on his wine. He slammed his glass down. She did what? She bought a house. Jessica threw the envelopes onto the table. She invited us to a housewarming next Sunday. My mother Linda picked up one of the envelopes. She squinted at it. Chloe, she said, her voice full of warning. What did you do? Did you get involved with a predatory lender? You know you cannot afford property taxes. You are going to ruin your credit score forever. Marcus was laughing now. He was shaking his head. Let her dream, Linda. Let her dream. I bet it is a foreclosure flip. Probably has black mold and a leaky roof. He looked at me. We will come, Chloe. We will bring a toolkit. Sounds like you are going to need it. I stood there at the entrance of the dining room. They were all laughing. My father was shaking his head with a pitying smile. My mother was looking at the envelope with disdain. Jessica and Marcus were high-fiving with their eyes. They were having the time of their lives. They thought they were watching a clown perform a trick. They didn't look at the address on the card. If they had, they would have stopped laughing. I checked my watch. I have to go, I said. I have a meeting with my interior designer early tomorrow morning. Interior designer? Jessica shrieked. You mean you are going to paint the walls yourself? Goodbye, Chloe. Drive safe in that death trap of a car. I walked out of the house. I walked down the stone steps. I walked past the fountain that was too small for the driveway. I got into my Honda Civic. I started the engine. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw the lights of their spec home glowing in the distance. It looked big. It looked impressive. But I knew the foundation was cracking. Next Sunday, they would walk into my world. And in my world, there were no cracks. There were no mortgages. There were no lies. There was only the truth. And the truth was expensive. I turned onto the highway and headed toward the coast, toward the private road that led to the ocean, toward the place where the real money lived. They had laughed at the idea of my house. I wondered if they would still be laughing when they saw the gate. Sunday afternoon arrived with a sky so blue it looked artificial. It was the kind of weather that wealthy people paid extra for. I was waiting at my estate in Southampton, standing on the terrace that overlooked the Atlantic Ocean. I checked my watch. It was a Rolex day date with an olive dial, but unlike my brother-in-law Marcus, I actually owned it. I calculated their arrival time. If they left Greenwich at 2 and hit the usual Sunday traffic on I-95, they would be arriving shortly. I could picture the scene inside their car perfectly. I knew my family better than I knew the stock market, and that was saying something. Back in Greenwich, Marcus was loading his family into his Range Rover Sport. It was a 2024 model, painted in a color called Santorini Black. He had posted a photo of the steering wheel on Facebook that morning with the caption, "Sunday drive to visit the less fortunate," followed by a prayer hand emoji. What he did not post was the financing agreement for that car. I had run a background check on his assets the night before. He was paying $1,480 a month for that car on an 84-month term. He had rolled negative equity from his previous BMW into the loan. He was literally driving a financial anchor, but to the neighbors he looked like a king. Jessica sat in the passenger seat. She was wearing a floral dress from a designer collaboration at Target, but she had belted it with a Gucci belt to try and elevate the look. She had a bag of gifts at her feet. It was not a bottle of wine or a candle. It was a cleaning bucket filled with generic brand sponges, a bottle of bleach, and a box of trash bags. "We will need these," she told my mother, who was squeezing into the back seat. "Chloe said the place is a fixer-upper. You know what that means in her budget. It means it is condemned." My mother. Linda adjusted her pearls. She hated sitting in the back. She felt it was beneath her dignity as the matriarch of the Vance family. "I just hope it does not smell," she said. "Remember that apartment she had in Brooklyn? The one above the curry shop. I smelled like cumin for a week after visiting her." Marcus started the engine. The car roared to life, a sound designed to make men feel powerful. He punched the address I had given them into the navigation system. He typed it in slowly. 1040 Meadow Lane, Southampton, New York. He stopped typing. He frowned at the screen. He hit the backspace button and typed it again. "That is weird," he said. "What is weird?" Jessica asked, checking her makeup in the visor mirror. "The GPS." Marcus tapped the screen. "It is routing us to the Hamptons." Jessica stopped applying her lip liner. "The Hamptons? That makes no sense. Chloe cannot afford the tolls to get to the Hamptons, let alone a house there. You must have typed the zip code wrong." Marcus shook his head. "Number one, I typed it exactly as she wrote it on that ridiculous gold card. Meadow Lane. Maybe there is a Meadow Lane in Bridgeport. You know how these cheap towns copy street names to sound fancy?" He zoomed out on the map. "No, it is definitely pointing to Southampton, right out on the fork." My father Thomas spoke up from the back seat. He was wearing his country club blazer, even though he had not paid his dues in 3 months. "Maybe she is house-sitting," he said. "That would explain it. She probably got a gig watching some rich person dogs while they are in Europe. That is why she invited us. She wants to show off a house that isn't hers." My mother let out a sigh of relief. "Of course. That makes perfect sense. She is house-sitting." Oh, thank God. I was worried she had actually bought some shack in the middle of nowhere. At least if she is house-sitting, the plumbing will work. Marcus laughed. He put the car in drive and pulled out of their driveway. "House-sitting. That is classic Chloe. She probably thinks she can fool us. We will get there and she will act like she owns the place. Watch. I bet she has put photos of herself over the real owner's family pictures. They drove through the manicured streets of Greenwich. They passed the golf courses and the private schools. They felt secure in their superiority. They were the homeowners. They were the successful ones. They were going to visit the poor relation who was playing pretend. The drive took 2 hours. The traffic on the Long Island Expressway was brutal. Marcus spent the entire time complaining about gas prices and the incompetence of other drivers. He screamed at a Toyota Prius that cut him off, calling the driver a peasant. The irony was that the Prius driver probably had a higher net worth than Marcus. As they got closer to the Hamptons, the scenery began to change. The strip malls and gas stations faded away. They were replaced by farm stands selling organic heirloom tomatoes for $8 a pound. The trees got taller, the hedges got thicker. The cars around them changed too. The Toyotas and Fords disappeared. They were surrounded by Bentleys, Aston Martins, and vintage Ferraris. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tighter. He was entering a territory where his Range Rover was the equivalent of a Honda Civic. He felt it. He felt the shift in the hierarchy. They took the exit for Southampton. They drove past the boutiques on Main Street. They passed the Ralph Lauren store and the art galleries. Jessica looked out the window. Her eyes were wide. "Okay, seriously," she said. "Where is she taking us? There are no slums here. The cheapest house in this zip code is like $2 million. "Maybe she rented a room," my mother suggested. "You know, sometimes these big estates have servants' quarters. Maybe she is renting a room above a garage. Or maybe she's living in a pool house that hasn't been renovated since the 80s. "That has to be it," Marcus said. "She is renting a servant shack." God, that is pathetic. Living in the shadow of real wealth just to say you have a Southampton address. It is desperate. They turned onto Meadow Lane. For those who do not know, Meadow Lane is not just a street. It is known globally as Billionaire Lane. It is a 5-mile strip of sand and pavement that houses some of the most expensive real estate on planet Earth. The neighbors include fashion designers, tech moguls, and hedge fund managers who make Marcus Boss look like a pauper. The ocean was on the left, the bay was on the right. The houses were hidden behind 12-foot-high privet hedges and massive security gates. Marcus drove slowly. He was looking at the mailboxes. Number 900, number 950. "These houses are insane," Jessica whispered. "Look at that one. It looks like a spaceship." "That is the Calvin Klein estate," Marcus said. He sounded breathless. He knew the real estate listings. He read them like pornography. "Why are we here?" my mother asked. Her voice was trembling slightly. "Did she give us the wrong address on purpose? Is this a prank? Is she going to pop out from behind a bush and laugh at us for driving all this way?" Marcus slowed down even more. "The GPS says we are close, 1,000 feet. He looked at the blue dot on the screen. It was moving toward the very end of the lane, toward the most secluded and exclusive part of the strip. "There is no way," Marcus muttered. "There is absolutely no way." "Maybe she is working as a maid," Jessica said. A hint of excitement crept into her voice. "That is it. She is the maid. Oh my God, imagine. We are going to visit Chloe at work. We can ask her to bring us iced tea while we sit by the owner's pool." My father chuckled. "That would be rich. Visiting my daughter the maid on Billionaire Lane. Well, at least it is an honest living. Better than that writing nonsense she does." The car crept forward. The air in the vehicle was thick with anticipation. They were ready to see me in a uniform. They were ready to see me scrubbing a floor. They were ready to validate every negative thought they had ever had about me. Marcus tapped the brakes. "Here it is," he said. He pointed to a set of massive iron gates on the right side of the road. They were black and imposing, topped with gold spikes. There was no house visible from the road, just a long, winding driveway disappearing into a forest of imported Japanese pines. The mailbox was simple. A black metal box with silver numbers, 1040. There was no name on the box, just the numbers. Marcus stopped the car in the middle of the road. He looked at the gate. He looked at his GPS. "You have reached your destination," the robotic voice announced. "This is a mistake," Jessica said. "It has to be. Look at this place, Marcus. This is a $20 million property. Minimum. Try 30, Marcus said. His voice was dry. "If this is oceanfront on Meadow Lane, it is 30 million just for the dirt. The house is extra." My mother leaned forward from the back seat. Call her, she commanded. Call her right now and ask where she really is. I am not going to sit here in front of some stranger gate looking like a fool. She probably meant 1040 Meadow Street in some ghetto in Long Island City. Jessica pulled out her phone. She dialed my number. I watched my phone buzz on the glass table in front of me. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. Hello? I said. Chloe, where are you? Jessica snapped. Her voice was tinny through the speaker. We are at the address you sent, and we are sitting in front of some fortress on Meadow Lane. Stop playing games. Send us the real location. I smiled. I took a sip of my iced tea. I am at the house, Jessica. I see you on the security camera. You are driving the black Range Rover, correct? You are blocking the road. Pull up to the intercom. There was silence on the other end of the line. Total, absolute silence. I could hear Marcus breathing. I could hear the confusion radiating through the signal. Jessica lowered the phone. She looked at Marcus. She says she is inside. She says to use the intercom. Marcus stared at the gate. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. But he was a man of ego. He could not back down. Fine, he said. Let us see what game she is playing. Maybe she knows the security guard. Maybe she bribed him to let us in so she could take a photo for Instagram. He rolled the car forward. The gravel crunched under his tires. He stopped next to the intercom pillar. It was made of solid granite. He rolled down his window. He did not press the button. He just stared at the camera lens. Suddenly the gate began to move. It did not creak. It did not groan. It glided open silently, powered by a hydraulic system that cost more than my mother wedding ring. The heavy iron wings swung inward, revealing the driveway. It was lined with cobblestones, not asphalt. Cobblestones. Each one hand laid. Marcus took his foot off the brake. The car rolled forward. They were crossing the threshold. They were leaving their world of least luxury and entering my world of owned power. And they had no idea that the moment those gates closed behind them, there was no turning back. The trap was sprung. My mother whispered from the back seat, "She must be the caretaker. She has to be the caretaker." But her voice lacked conviction. For the first time in her life, she sounded afraid. The Range Rover moved slowly down the driveway deeper into the estate. The trees blocked out the sun. The shadows were long. And I was waiting. The iron gates closed behind them. It was not a loud sound. It was a dull, heavy thud that resonated through the chassis of their Range Rover. It sounded like the door of a vault sealing shut. Inside the car, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Outside on Meadow Lane, there was the sound of the ocean and the distant hum of other cars. Inside my property, there was only silence. Absolute, unnatural silence. I watched on the monitors as Marcus took his foot off the brake. He was driving at 5 miles per hour. He was looking at the rearview mirror, watching the gates lock automatically. There was no keypad on the inside of the gate. There was no sensor to let them out. They were locked in until I decided to let them leave. Jessica rolled down her window. She looked at the mechanism on the gate pillar. "Did you see that?" she asked. Her voice was less confident now. There was no call box. There was no keypad. It was just a black glass panel. "It is biometric," Marcus said. His voice was tight. "It is a retinal scanner and license plate recognition." He gripped the steering wheel. The leather creaked under his hands. "That system costs $50,000 to install," he muttered. "Why would a caretaker need military-grade security? Maybe the owners are paranoid," my mother said. "Rich people are crazy, Marcus, you know that. They probably have art in there, or gold bars. Chloe is just guarding it. She is probably watching the monitors right now, laughing at us." Marcus did not answer. He was looking at the driveway. It stretched out before them like a ribbon of gray silk. It was not asphalt. It was crushed granite imported from a specific quarry in Vermont. I had chosen it because it made a very specific crunching sound under tires, a sound that announced arrival. The driveway was lined with trees, massive ancient oaks that formed a canopy overhead, blocking out the afternoon sun. These were not trees that had been planted recently. These were trees that had stood here for 200 years. To buy a mature oak tree of that size and have it transplanted costs roughly $40,000 per tree. There were 50 trees lining the drive, $2 million in landscaping just for the driveway. I knew Marcus was doing the math. I knew he was calculating the cost of the mulch, the cost of the uplighting fixtures hidden in the ferns, the cost of the irrigation system required to keep this level of greenery alive in the salt air. The numbers were assaulting him. "This is a long driveway," Jessica said. She leaned forward. "Are we lost? Are we driving into a park? Where is the house?" "It is a setback," Marcus said. His throat sounded dry. "It is a zoning law in Southampton. For estates over 10 acres, the main residence has to be set back at least 500 yards from the road to ensure privacy. 10 acres. My mother scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous, Marcus. Nobody owns 10 acres on Meadow Lane. The land is too expensive. This is probably a shared driveway for a condo complex or something." Marcus shook his head. "No, this is single family. Look at the trees, Linda. Condo complexes plant pine trees because they are cheap and grow fast. These are white oaks." The car continued to roll forward. The tunnel of trees seemed endless. The light filtered through the leaves in dappled patterns dancing on the hood of the Range Rover. Suddenly, Marcus slammed on the brakes. The car skidded slightly on the granite. "What?" Jessica screamed. "What is it?" "Did you see a deer?" Marcus was staring at a small bronze plaque mounted on a stone marker by the side of the road. It was discreet. If you were driving fast, you would miss it. But Marcus had seen it. The plaque read simply, "The Whispering Estate, 1920. Marcus turned pale. His skin took on an ashy tone. He put the car in park in the middle of the driveway. "Oh my God," he whispered. "What?" Jessica demanded. "What is it, Marcus? You are freaking me out." "I know this place," he said. He looked at Jessica, his eyes wide with genuine fear. "I know this property. It was on the Bloomberg terminal last month. It was the talk of the office." "So," Jessica said, "so it is a famous house. That just proves Chloe is house-sitting for someone famous, maybe a movie star." "No." Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead. "It was not a public listing, Jessica. It was a pocket listing, off-market, strictly confidential. The seller was the estate of a European shipping magnate." He looked around at the trees as if they were closing in on him. "My boss tried to get a meeting with the broker. He wanted to pitch a client for this property. The broker wouldn't even take his call. He said the buyer had already been selected. He said the buyer paid cash." "Cash?" my mother asked. "How much cash?" $28.5 million, Marcus said. The number hung in the air like a poisonous gas. 28.5 million. Closed in 48 hours. No mortgage, no contingency, just a wire transfer. The car fell silent. The only sound was the air conditioning blasting full force, fighting the sweat that was breaking out on Marcus' neck. My mother laughed nervously. It was a high-pitched, brittle sound. "Well," she said, "that settles it then. Chloe is definitely the maid, or maybe the dog walker, because obviously she does not have $28 million. She does not even have $28. She leaned forward and tapped Marcus on the shoulder. "Drive, Marcus. Stop being dramatic. Whoever bought this place obviously needs staff, and they probably hired a staffing agency that was desperate enough to hire your sister-in-law. That is all this is." Marcus took his foot off the brake, but he did not accelerate. He let the car crawl forward. He was trying to reconcile two realities that could not coexist. Reality A was that I was Chloe the failure, the girl with the peeling Honda Civic, the girl who needed his charity, the girl he had mocked at the dinner table. Reality B was that I had the access codes to a property that his own boss couldn't even get a tour of. If I was the maid, why did the security system let me invite guests? High-security estates do not let staff invite random people over for tea. If I was the dog walker, why was I here on a Sunday afternoon? The cognitive dissonance was making him nauseous. Jessica looked out the window. "It is pretty," she admitted reluctantly. "I guess if you have to be a servant, this is a nice place to work. Does she have to wear a uniform, do you think?" "Maybe we will catch her in a little apron." She pulled out her phone. "I am going to live stream this," she said. "Walking into a $30 million estate. My followers will die." She opened Instagram. She held up the phone. "Hey guys, she said into the camera, putting on her influencer voice. So we are in the Hamptons today visiting my sister at her new workplace. You have to see this driveway. It is giving major Succession vibes. She panned the camera to the trees. Marcus reached over and slapped the phone out of her hand. Stop it, he hissed. Jessica stared at him. Marcus, what is wrong with you? Put the phone away, Marcus said. His voice was shaking. Do not film anything. If this place is what I think it is, the security team will sue us into oblivion if we post unauthorized footage. This isn't a public park, Jessica. This is old money, dangerous money. He looked straight ahead. The tunnel of trees was ending. The driveway was opening up, and then he saw it. Through the gap in the trees, the house began to emerge. It was not just a house. It was a structure that commanded the landscape. Marcus let out a breath that sounded like a whimper. He knew in his gut that he had made a terrible mistake. He didn't know exactly what the mistake was yet. He didn't understand how the pieces fit together. But he knew that the dynamic had shifted. He was a shark in a swimming pool, but he had just swum into the open ocean, and he was beginning to realize that he was not the predator here. He was the bait. The car rolled out of the tree line. The full scope of the estate revealed itself, and the silence of the car was replaced by the sound of 3 hearts breaking at the exact same moment. The tunnel of ancient oak trees finally ended. The canopy broke apart to reveal the sky. And there it was, my home. It was not a house in the traditional sense. It was a statement carved out of raw concrete and hurricane-proof glass. It sat on the edge of the dunes like a modern fortress staring down the Atlantic Ocean. 14,000 square feet of brutalist architecture designed by a Pritzker Prize-winning architect. The structure was a series of floating, cantilevered planes that seemed to defy gravity. There were no white pillars here, no cute shutters, no welcome mats. It was a building that did not ask for approval. It commanded respect. I watched on the high-definition monitor in my library as Marcus stopped the Range Rover. The car looked small and insignificant against the backdrop of the gray limestone walls. The house was monolithic. It was silent. It was terrifyingly expensive. Marcus put the car in park. I zoomed in on his face. He was not moving. He was staring at the facade of the house. I knew exactly what he was looking at. He was looking at the glass. The entire ocean-facing side of the house was floor-to-ceiling glass. But it was not normal glass. It was triple-paned, low-iron glass imported from Germany. It was invisible. It created the illusion that there was no barrier between the living room and the sea. Each pane was 20 feet tall and cost more than his entire college education. He was looking at the cladding. It was travertine limestone, sourced from the same quarry in Tivoli that supplied the Roman Colosseum. It was not a veneer. These were solid blocks of stone. I saw Jessica turn to him. Her lips moved. I could not hear her, but I could read the panic in her body language. She was clutching her cleaning bucket. The bright yellow plastic bucket filled with sponges and bleach. It looked like a neon sign of her ignorance against the muted elegance of my estate. The front door opened. It was a pivot door made of oxidized copper standing 12 feet tall. Elias stepped out. Elias was my house manager. He was a 60-year-old man who had previously managed the household of a British duke. He was wearing a bespoke, 3-piece charcoal suit. His shirt was crisp white. His tie was silk. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. He looked like a diplomat. He walked down the floating concrete steps. He did not rush. He moved with the fluid grace of someone who owned the space he occupied. He approached the driver's side of the Range Rover. Marcus did not roll down the window. He was frozen. Elias waited for 1 second, then tapped the glass gently with a gloved knuckle. Marcus fumbled with the controls. The window slid down. "Good afternoon, sir," Elias said. His voice was smooth and devoid of any warmth. Marcus stared at him. Marcus was wearing a polo shirt from an outlet store and boat shoes that had seen better days. Next to Elias, he looked like a delivery boy. "Hi," Marcus stammered. "We are here to see Chloe." "Chloe Vance. We might have the wrong address. The GPS sent us here, but this looks like a mistake." Elias did not smile. He did not reassure him. "You are at the residence of Ms. Vance. She is expecting you. Please leave your vehicle here. The valet team will park it in the subterranean garage." Valet team, Jessica whispered loud enough for the microphone to catch. Elias opened the rear door for my mother. Linda stepped out. Her heels clicked on the hand-cut granite pavers. She looked up at the house and her hand went to her throat. She looked dizzy. "This is Chloe House," she asked Elias. Her voice was trembling. "Are you sure? My daughter Chloe. Short hair, drives a Honda. Ms. Vance is waiting for you in the glass library," Elias said, ignoring her description. "Please follow me." Jessica stepped out of the car. She was still holding the yellow cleaning bucket. She didn't seem to realize she was holding it. It was a reflex, a security blanket. Elias looked at the bucket. He looked at it for a long, uncomfortable moment. He did not ask what it was for. He did not offer to take it. He simply raised one eyebrow a fraction of an inch. That single gesture conveyed more judgment than 1,000 words. Jessica looked down at the bucket. She turned red, a deep flush that started at her chest and went up to her hairline. She quickly tried to hide the bucket behind her back, but it was too large. "I brought some supplies," she stammered. "Just in case." "Indeed," Elias said. He turned and began to walk back up the steps. The family followed him. They walked huddled together like sheep entering a slaughterhouse. They reached the massive copper door. It swung open silently on hydraulic hinges. They stepped into the foyer. The air inside was different. It was crisp and smelled faintly of white tea and fig. The temperature was controlled to a precise 68 degrees. The silence was absolute. The heavy doors closed behind them, shutting out the sound of the wind and the ocean. The foyer was a gallery. The walls were white plaster, polished to look like marble. The floor was a continuous poured concrete surface that felt cool and solid. There was no furniture in the foyer, just art. In the center of the room stood a sculpture. It was a twisted form of bronze and steel, standing 7 feet tall. My father Thomas stopped in front of it. He knew enough about art to know that this was not a reproduction. It was an original. He looked at the signature on the base. His eyes went wide. "Is this a Moor?" he whispered. He looked around the room. On the left wall was a canvas that was 10 feet wide. It was a chaotic explosion of colors, a Basquiat. Marcus walked up to the painting. He stood 6 inches from it. He was looking for the pixels. He was looking for the evidence that it was a print, that it was fake. He turned to Elias. "Is this real?" he asked. "Ms. Vance does not collect reproductions," Elias said. He gestured down the long hallway that stretched toward the ocean view. "Please, this way." They walked down the hall. Their footsteps echoed slightly on the concrete. They passed rooms that were visible through open arches. A formal dining room with a table made of a single slab of walnut that seated 20. A living room with a fireplace that floated in the center of the room, suspended from the ceiling. Everywhere they looked, they saw wealth. But not the kind of wealth they understood. This was not the flashy logo-covered wealth of Greenwich. This was quiet wealth, the kind of wealth that whispered. They saw no family photos, no clutter, no mail on a counter. It felt like a museum. My mother was breathing hard. She was clutching her purse with white knuckles. She looked like she was afraid to touch the walls. She looked like she was afraid she would be billed for the air she was breathing. They reached the end of the hallway. Elias stopped in front of a pair of glass doors. "Ms. Vance is inside," he said. He pressed a button on the wall and the glass doors slid open. The library was my favorite room. It was a glass box cantilevered over the dunes. 3 walls were nothing but glass, giving a 270-degree view of the ocean. The 4th wall was floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with first editions and leather-bound ledgers. I was sitting in the Eames lounge chair facing the ocean. I did not turn around when the doors opened. I took a sip of my tea. I heard them shuffle in. I heard the plastic handle of Jessica cleaning bucket creak as she squeezed it. I let the silence stretch. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. I wanted them to soak it in. I wanted them to feel the space. I wanted them to realize how small they were in this room. Finally, I spun the chair around. I was wearing a simple cashmere sweater and linen trousers. No jewelry, no shoes, just me. I looked at them. They were huddled near the door, afraid to step onto the silk rug. "Welcome," I said. My voice was calm. I looked at Jessica. I looked at the yellow bucket in her hand. I see you brought the cleaning supplies, Jessica. That was thoughtful, but I think the housekeeping staff has already handled the dusting today. Jessica dropped the bucket. It hit the floor with a loud clatter. A bottle of bleach rolled out and stopped at my feet. The noise rang through the room like a gunshot. Nobody laughed. Nobody made a joke. My mother looked at me. Her eyes were filled with tears, but they were not tears of joy. They were tears of terror. She was looking at a stranger. "Chloe," she whispered, "whose house is this?" I stood up. I walked over to the desk. I picked up the deed to the property. I had framed it in glass. I held it up. "It is mine, Mom. Every square inch of it." I placed the deed back on the desk. "Now, who wants tea?" I sat in the Eames lounge chair facing the ocean. It was an original production model from 1956, upholstered in gloved soft black leather and rosewood. It was currently valued at $12,000. I did not stand up when my family entered the room. I did not offer a hug. I did not smile. I simply gestured to the B&B Italia sofa opposite me. "Please sit down," I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used in boardrooms when I was acquiring a distressed asset. My family stood frozen near the doorway. The glass walls of the library surrounded them, exposing them to the vast indifference of the Atlantic Ocean. They looked small. They looked out of place. Jessica was still staring at the yellow cleaning bucket she had dropped. The bottle of bleach lay on the silk rug like an accusation. That rug was a hand-knotted Persian masterpiece from the 17th century. It was insured for $120,000. If the bleach leaked, it would cost more than Jessica made in 3 years to restore it. "Sit down," I repeated. They moved like puppets with tangled strings. My mother Linda walked to the edge of the sofa. She touched the fabric tentatively, as if testing for heat. She sat down on the very edge of the cushion, her back rigid. Her eyes darted around the room, scanning the shelves, the art, the view. She was looking for a sign that this was temporary. She was looking for a family photo of strangers. She was looking for proof that I was just the help. Marcus sat next to her. He looked ill. He was sweating profusely, and his eyes were fixed on the document I had placed on the coffee table. Jessica sat on the other side. She crossed her legs and uncrossed them. She pulled at the hem of her target dress. I leaned forward and picked up the teapot. It was not a normal teapot. It was Japanese kintsugi. It was a ceramic piece from the Meiji era that had been broken and repaired with pure 24-karat gold lacquer. The philosophy was that the break making the object more beautiful and valuable. I had bought this set at an auction in Kyoto for $45,000. I poured the tea. The steam rose in the air, smelling of jasmine and rare herbs. "Tea?" I asked. Nobody answered. They just stared at the gold veins running through the white porcelain. My mother cleared her throat. It was a dry, scratching sound. "Chloe," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "This is a lovely room. The view is spectacular." "Thank you," I said. She licked her lips. She looked at Marcus, then back to me. "So," she continued, "who are you working for? Is it an older couple? Or maybe a celebrity who travels a lot? It must be a lot of responsibility managing a property of this magnitude. I hope they pay you well." She smiled a tight, desperate smile. She needed this to be true. If I was a servant, the world still made sense. If I was a servant, she was still the superior mother, and I was still the disappointing daughter. I took a sip of my tea. I savored the warmth. "I am not working for anyone, Mom," I said. My mother blinked. "Oh, you mean you are house-sitting for a friend. That is nice. Is it someone from college? I didn't know you had friends with this kind of money." I set the cup down on the saucer. The porcelain made a sharp click. "I am not house-sitting," I said. My mother's laugh was brittle. "Well, you are not squatting, Chloe. Stop playing games. Who owns the house? We just want to thank them for letting us visit. It is very generous of them to let the staff invite family over." I looked her in the eye. "The owner is sitting in front of you." My mother froze. She looked at me blankly. "What?" "I own this house," I said. "My name is on the deed. Chloe Vance. I bought it last month. I paid $28.5 million. Cash, no mortgage, no bank, just a wire transfer from my holding company." The silence that followed was heavy. It was the sound of a worldview shattering. My mother shook her head, a quick, violent motion. "No," she said. "That is impossible. You are a freelancer, Chloe. You drive a Honda Civic. You live in a studio in Queens. You asked Marcus for a loan last week." "Correction," I said. "Marcus offered me a predatory loan last week. I did not ask for it. And yes, I drive a Honda Civic because it is reliable, and I do not need a car to define my worth, unlike some people." I looked at Marcus. He flinched. "As for the studio in Queens," I continued, "I own that building too, and the one next to it, and the commercial complex on the corner. I have been buying real estate in the outer boroughs for 7 years, Mom. While you were busy criticizing my shoes, I was building a portfolio." "Liar," Jessica hissed. She stood up. Her face was flushed with anger. "You are a liar, Chloe. You always have been. You probably rented this place for the weekend to impress us. You probably spent your entire life savings just to rent this Airbnb for one day so you could pretend to be better than us. That is sick. You need therapy." I did not get angry. I did not raise my voice. I simply reached for the document on the table. It was a bound report with a black cover. Gold lettering on the front read, "Vance Capital Holdings Quarterly Report, Q2 2024. I tossed it across the table. It landed in front of Jessica with a heavy thud. "Open it," I said. Jessica looked at the booklet like it was a bomb. "Go ahead," I said. "Read it. Unless you are afraid of what is inside." Jessica snatched the book up. Her hands were shaking. She flipped it open. She stared at the first page. It was a summary of assets. I saw her eyes widening. I saw her scanning the numbers. "Read the first line out loud, Jessica," I commanded. She swallowed hard. She didn't want to say it. "Read it. Total real estate holdings," she whispered. Louder, "Total real estate holdings." She said, her voice cracking. $142 million. My mother gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Keep reading," I said. "What is the liquid cash position?" Jessica turned the page. Her fingers left a smudge on the glossy paper. "Cash and cash equivalents, $48 million. And the liabilities?" I asked. Jessica looked at the bottom of the page. She squinted. She couldn't find them. "Zero," she said. "Long-term debt. Zero." She dropped the book on the table. She slumped back onto the sofa. She looked like she had been punched in the stomach. "That is fake," she whispered. "You printed that at Kinko's. Anyone can type numbers on a page." I leaned back in my chair. "Turn to page 10, I said. Jessica didn't move. Marcus reached out and took the book. His hands were trembling so badly the pages rattled. He turned to page 10. It was a copy of the wire transfer for the purchase of this estate. It showed the originating account. It showed the receiving account. It showed the amount, $28,500,000, and it showed the signature authorizing the transfer, Chloe Vance. Marcus looked up at me. His face was gray. He was a finance guy. He knew what a wire confirmation looked like. He knew the SWIFT codes. He knew the bank stamps. He knew this was real. He looked around the room again. But this time he didn't see a museum. He saw the truth. He saw the power. He looked at the kintsugi teacup in front of me. "That tea set," he said quietly. "It is Meiji period, isn't it?" "Yes," I said. "I saw a set like that at auction last year," he said. "It went for 50 grand. 45, I corrected. "I got a deal." Marcus closed the book. He placed it gently on the table as if it were a holy relic. "You," he stammered, "you are the ghost of Queens." I smiled. It was a cold smile. "So you have heard of me?" In the industry, there were rumors of a private investor who was buying up commercial blocks in Queens and Brooklyn, paying cash and revitalizing neighborhoods. They called this investor the Ghost because nobody ever saw a face, just an LLC name. "We thought it was a foreign syndicate," Marcus whispered, "or a cartel. We never thought it was one person. We certainly never thought it was you." My mother was making a sound that was halfway between a sob and a laugh. "I don't understand," she said. "If you have all this money, Chloe, why? Why do you drive that car? Why do you wear those clothes? Why did I let you treat me like garbage?" I finished her sentence. I picked up my teacup again. Because it was a test, Mom. And you failed. I looked at them. I wanted to see who you were when you thought I had nothing. I wanted to see if you loved me or if you only loved success. I took a sip. And now I have my answer. You didn't invite your daughter to dinner last week. You invited a punching bag you needed someone to look down on so you could feel tall. I stood up. I walked over to the glass wall. I looked out at the ocean. You laughed at my apartment in Queens, I said. But that apartment building generates $30,000 a month in net profit. You laughed at my car. But that car allows me to move through the city invisible while you scream for attention in your leased Rovers. I turned back to face them. You have spent your whole lives playing a game called Look at Me. I have been playing a game called Empire. My mother was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face, ruining her foundation. Chloe, please, she said. We are family. We just wanted you to be secure. We were worried. Worried? I laughed. It was a dry sound. You weren't worried, Mom. You were embarrassed. There is a difference. I walked back to the table. I tapped the black book with my index finger. This is security. This is freedom. What you have is debt and delusion. I looked at Jessica. She was staring at the floor. She couldn't meet my eyes. You offered me a job cleaning your basement, Jessica. Do you remember that? You offered to let me live like a rat in your cellar in exchange for raising your children. Jessica flinched. I was trying to help, she mumbled. No, I said. You were trying to own me. You wanted a servant who shared your blood because it would make you feel like royalty. I leaned down close to her face. Well, here is the reality check. I could buy your house out of petty cash today. I could buy the bank that holds your mortgage tomorrow. And on Wednesday, I could turn your precious subdivision into a parking lot if the zoning board allowed it. Jessica recoiled, pressing herself into the sofa. But I won't, I said, straightening up. Because unlike you, I don't need to destroy people to feel powerful. I checked my watch. However, I do have standards for who I allow in my home. And people who bring bleach to a tea party usually don't make the list. I sat back down in my Eames chair. Drink your tea, I said. It costs $200 an ounce. It would be a waste to leave it. They sat there in silence. The steam rose from the cups. The ocean crashed against the shore outside, and the black book sat on the table between us like a tombstone marking the death of their arrogance. Marcus could not sit still. The reality of the bank wire transfer was burning a hole in his mind. He stood up from the designer sofa. His legs were restless. He walked toward the wall of built-in bookshelves that lined the west side of the library. He needed to find a flaw. He needed to find something that proved this was all a facade. He was running his finger along the spines of the books. He was looking for fake books, the kind used in furniture showrooms that are just cardboard boxes glued together. But they were not cardboard. They were real. First edition copies of The Wealth of Nations and leather-bound histories of the Federal Reserve. Then he stopped. He was staring at a photograph. It was small. It was framed in simple silver. It was tucked away on a shelf between a biography of Rockefeller and a stack of antique maps. It was a black and white photograph taken on a golf course. I watched him from my chair. I knew exactly which photo he was looking at. I had placed it there, knowing he would find it. It was a trap within a trap. In the photo, I was wearing a polo shirt and holding a driver. Standing next to me, laughing with his arm around my shoulder, was a man Marcus knew very well. A man Marcus worshipped. It was Lawrence Sterling, the CEO of Sterling and Finch, the bank where Marcus worked. Lawrence Sterling was a legend on Wall Street. He managed $400 billion in assets. He was known for being cold, distant, and impossible to meet. Marcus had worked at the bank for 7 years and had never even been in the same elevator as Lawrence Sterling. But there I was, in a photo, laughing with him like we were old friends. Marcus leaned in closer. His nose almost touched the glass of the frame. He was trying to see if it was Photoshop. I took a sip of my tea. He has a terrible slice, I said. Marcus jumped. He turned around slowly. His face was pale. What? He whispered. Lawrence, I said. On the back nine at Pebble Beach. He cannot hit a fairway to save his life. I had to give him 2 strokes on every hole just to keep the game interesting. We played for $10,000 a hole. I took $40,000 from him that day. He wrote me a check on a napkin. Marcus looked at me. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You know Lawrence Sterling," he managed to say. I nodded. "I know Larry. We sit on the board of the Metropolitan Opera together, and he consults me on emerging market trends in Southeast Asia." Marcus looked back at the photo. Then he looked at the black report book on the table, the one titled Vance Capital Holdings. I could see the gears turning in his head. I could see the sweat forming on his upper lip. "Vance Capital Holdings," he muttered. "CV Holdings." He froze. His eyes went wide. The color drained from his face completely, leaving him looking like a wax figure. "CV Holdings," he repeated. He looked at me with horror. "Last week," he said. His voice was shaking. "Last week we got a memo, a priority memo from the executive suite. It said the bank was trying to secure a cornerstone investment from a new firm called CV Holdings. It said they were a whale client. It said whoever landed the account would get a partnership track promotion." He pointed a trembling finger at me. "CV Chloe Vance." I smiled. It was a thin, razor-sharp smile. "Bingo," I said. I stood up and walked over to where he was standing. I stood next to him and looked at the photo of his boss. "You are sharp, Marcus. It only took you 7 days to figure it out. Your boss, Lawrence, figured it out a lot faster. He called me this morning." I turned to face him. He was taller than me, but in that moment he looked small. He was shrinking under the weight of the truth. He called me at 8 a.m. I continued. He was panicked. He said his private wealth division is underperforming. He said his quarterly targets are down by 12%. He said he has a director of private wealth who is struggling to bring in new capital. I paused. I looked at Marcus' name tag on his mental uniform. He said this director is named Marcus. Marcus gripped the bookshelf for support. His knuckles were white. "He told you that," Marcus whispered. "He did," I said. "He asked me for a favor. He begged me, actually. He asked me to move some of my liquidity into his fund, specifically into your portfolio." I walked back to the table and picked up the financial report. "He wants $50 million, Marcus. He wants me to wire $50 million into your managed accounts by next Friday. He said if I do it, he can save the quarter. He said if I do it, he won't have to fire the director who is currently missing his KPI targets." I looked at Marcus. "You are missing your targets, aren't you, Marcus?" Marcus nodded. He couldn't speak. He was terrified. He knew exactly what his numbers were. He was in the red. He was desperate. That was why he was leasing a car he couldn't afford. That was why he was trying to loan me money at high interest. He was drowning in debt and trying to look successful to hide the fact that he was about to be terminated. He looked at me with a new expression. It was no longer arrogance. It was begging. "Chloe," he said. His voice cracked. $50 million. That would save me. That would get me the bonus, the promotion. I could pay off the house. I could pay off the car. He took a step toward me. "You are going to do it right. You are going to invest. We are family." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had laughed at my shoes an hour ago, the man who had told me I was a cautionary tale, the man who had offered to let me live in his basement as a servant. "I am considering it," I said. Marcus let out a breath of relief. He smiled a weak, pathetic smile. "Oh, thank God. Thank you, Chloe. I knew you would help. This is amazing. I will handle the account personally. I will give you the lowest management fees. I will treat you like royalty." I raised my hand. He stopped talking instantly. I said, "I am considering it. I haven't decided yet." I walked around the table, slowly circling him like a shark. "You see, Marcus, Lawrence told me something else. He told me that the director managing this account needs to be someone I trust, someone who respects me, someone who understands the value of a dollar." I stopped in front of him. "Do you think you fit that description, Marcus?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Yes. Yes, of course. I respect you, Chloe. I always have." I laughed. It was a short, cold sound. You respect me. You told me my car sounded like a lawnmower. You told me I was destined to be average. You tried to charge me 12% interest on a loan I didn't need. That was just banter, Marcus stammered. Just family joking. You know how we are? I know exactly how you are, I said. I picked up the black book. Here is the situation, Marcus. I have $50 million sitting in a cash account right now. I can transfer it to your bank in 10 minutes. If I do, you become the star employee. You get the bonus. You keep your house. You keep your fake reputation. I tapped the cover of the book. Or I can transfer it to your competitor. I had lunch with the vice president of JP Morgan yesterday. He offered me a very nice package. Marcus looked like he was going to vomit. Chloe, please, don't do that. If Lawrence finds out I lost CV Holdings to JP Morgan, he will fire me on the spot. He will blacklist me. I will never work in finance again. I nodded. I know. That is the leverage, Marcus. That is the position you put yourself in. I looked over at Jessica and my mother. They were sitting on the sofa watching this exchange in silence. They didn't understand the financial jargon, but they understood the tone. They understood that Marcus was begging. I turned back to Marcus. You wanted to teach me about the real world, Marcus. You wanted to teach me how wealth works. Well, this is the first lesson. I leaned in close. Real wealth doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to lease a watch. Real wealth is having the power to save a man's career or destroy it with a single phone call. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I unlocked it. I opened my contacts. I scrolled down to S. Sterling Lawrence. I held the phone up so Marcus could see the screen. I am going to make a decision, Marcus. But not yet. First, I want to finish my tea. I put the phone down on the table. Face up. Marcus stared at the phone. He looked like he wanted to grab it, but he was too afraid to move. He sank down into the chair opposite me. He looked defeated. He looked small. He realized that the sister-in-law he had mocked for years was not just rich. She was his boss. She was the hand of God in his small, pathetic world. And for the first time in his life, Marcus was quiet. He didn't brag. He didn't offer advice. He just sat there and prayed that I wouldn't press the call button. I picked up my teacup. So, I said, addressing the room, now that we have established who is actually employed and who is actually powerful, let us talk about that basement suite you offered me. I looked at Jessica. Tell me again how large it is. I want to hear the dimensions of the room you thought was appropriate for me. Jessica looked down at her hands. She was trembling. It is small, she whispered. I couldn't hear you. I said, it is small. She said louder. It is a storage room. We just put a rug in it. I nodded. A storage room. For your sister, while you live in 5 bedrooms paid for by debt. I took a sip of tea. Interesting. I looked back at Marcus. And you, Marcus, you were going to charge me rent for that storage room, weren't you? Marcus looked at the floor. Yes, he whispered. How much? I asked. $800 a month, he said. $800 for a damp basement in a house you don't even own. I shook my head. That is bad business, Marcus. No wonder your portfolio is underperforming. You are greedy, and greedy people make mistakes. I looked at my phone on the table. Lawrence hates greedy people. He likes performance. He likes results. I let the threat hang in the air. The $50 million was a sword hanging over his head by a thread, and I was holding the scissors. I watched him sweat. I watched him suffer. And I felt absolutely nothing but the cool ceramic of the teacup in my hand. This was not cruelty. This was correction. And the lesson had just begun. Marcus sat in the chair looking like a deflated balloon. The fight had left him. The reality of the $50 million leverage was too heavy for him to argue with. But Jessica was not done. She was not a finance professional. She did not understand the intricate mechanics of how I could destroy her husband's career with a single email. She only understood status, and right now she felt her status slipping away like sand through her fingers. She stood up abruptly. Her movements were jerky and uncoordinated. She knocked her knee against the edge of the low coffee table, but she was too angry to register the pain. So what? She spat the words out. I looked at her calmly. So what, Jessica? So you have money, she said. Her voice was rising in pitch, getting shrill and desperate. So you tricked some bank into giving you a credit line. Or maybe you found a sugar daddy. That is it, isn't it? She looked at my mother seeking validation. Mom, look at her. Look at this house. A 31-year-old single woman does not buy a $30 million estate with hard work. Not this kind of money. This is dirty money. Or it is old man money. Who is he, Chloe? Is he 80 years old? Is he married? Is that why you hide out here behind these gates? Because you are his mistress. My mother looked uncomfortable. She shifted on the sofa. Jessica, please, she murmured. No, Jessica screamed. I will not be quiet. She sits there acting superior, acting like she is better than us. But I know the truth. I have a husband, a real marriage, a respectable life. She is just a high-priced escort with a good accountant. I did not flinch. I did not defend my honor. I did not explain that my capital came from high-risk algorithmic trading and distressed real estate acquisitions. Explaining would imply that her opinion mattered. I simply took another sip of tea. Are you finished? I asked. Jessica's chest was heaving. Her face was blotchy. She looked around the room looking for something to break, something to attack, but everything was too expensive. Everything was too perfect. I need to use the restroom, she announced. Her voice wavered. I feel sick. Being around this much pretension makes me nauseous. I pointed toward a discreet door panel in the wall that looked like part of the bookshelf. Through there, down the hall, second door on the left. Jessica grabbed her purse. She marched toward the door, trying to salvage some dignity in her exit. She slammed the library door behind her, but the soft close mechanism prevented the satisfying bang she wanted. It just clicked shut, silently mocking her anger. I watched her go. Then I looked at Marcus. She is going to be a while, I said. I knew she was going to be a while because I knew exactly what she was walking into. I had set the stage perfectly. Jessica walked down the hallway. Her heels clicked on the polished concrete. She was muttering to herself, rehearsing the insults she would throw at me when she returned. She reached the door I had indicated. She pushed it open. It was the powder room. But calling it a powder room was an insult. It was a sanctuary of stone and light. The walls were clad in book-matched Calicotta gold marble. The veins of gold and gray flowed seamlessly from one slab to the next. The sink was carved from a single block of rock crystal. The faucet was unlacquered brass that cost more than her wedding dress. Jessica stepped inside and locked the door. She leaned against the cool marble and closed her eyes. Her heart was hammering in her chest. She pulled her phone out of her purse. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She dialed my mother number. It was an irrational act. My mother was sitting 50 feet away in the library, but Jessica was in a state of panic. She needed to gossip. She needed to spin the narrative before the truth settled in. Answer, she whispered. Pick up, Mom. My mother picked up on the second ring. Jessica, she whispered. Why are you calling me? I am in the other room. Mom, Jessica hissed into the phone. You have to come see this. You have to make an excuse and come here. What is it? It is the soap, Mom, the hand soap. It is Aesop, but not the regular kind. It is the limited edition glass bottle kind. And the towels. They are Fretta. Mom, do you know how much Frette towels cost? Jessica, stop it. My mother sounded tired. No, Mom, you do not understand. This is all real. She is not a mistress. A mistress does not have monogrammed towels woven in Italy. This is institutional wealth. She hung up. She could not articulate the fear that was gripping her, the fear that she was the fraud. She washed her hands. She dried them on the towel that cost $200. She looked at herself in the backlit mirror. She saw the lines of stress around her eyes. She saw the cheap fabric of her dress. She needed to find a flaw. She needed to find the crack in the facade. She opened the bathroom door, but she did not go back to the library. She saw another door across the hall. It was slightly ajar. I had left it ajar on purpose. Jessica looked left and right. She was snooping. It was in her nature. She walked across the hall on her tiptoes. She pushed the door open. It was my primary dressing room. Jessica stepped inside and the breath left her lungs in a rush. The room was larger than her entire living room in Greenwich. It was lined with white oak cabinetry and soft recessed lighting. It smelled of cedar and leather. But it was the contents that made her knees weak. On the center island, displayed under glass like museum artifacts, were the watches. Jessica walked over to the case. She stared down. She saw a Patek Philippe Nautilus with a Tiffany blue dial. She knew that watch. She had seen it on the wrists of rappers and billionaires on Instagram. It traded for $6 million. Next to it was an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak openworked in black ceramic. $300,000. There were 12 watches in the case. Jessica gripped the edge of the island. Her knuckles turned white. Marcus rented his watches. He paid $2,000 a month to wear a lie. Chloe had $10 million of horology sitting in a drawer. She turned to the wall of shelves. The bags. Jessica considered herself a fashion expert. She owned 2 Louis Vuitton bags. Both were entry-level canvas models. She treated them like children. Here on the shelves sat the Holy Grail, 3 Hermes Birkin bags, but not the regular leather ones. In the center, specifically lit by a spotlight, sat the Himalaya Birkin. It was made of Nile crocodile skin, dyed to resemble the snow-capped mountains of the Himalayas. The hardware was 18-karat white gold, encrusted with diamonds. Jessica let out a whimper. She had read about this bag in Vogue. It was the most expensive handbag in the world. It sold at auction for over $400,000. You could not just walk into a store and buy it. You had to be invited. You had to be a goddess in the eyes of the luxury world. Chloe had it sitting on a shelf next to a gym bag. Jessica reached out. She wanted to touch it. She wanted to feel the crocodile skin. She wanted to absorb some of the magic. But her hand stopped. She saw something else. Sitting on the vanity table next to a bottle of perfume was a stack of papers. They looked out of place in this temple of luxury. They were standard legal-size envelopes. The paper was cheap and recycled. Jessica walked over to the vanity. She wasn't interested in the perfume. She was interested in the paper. Why would a billionaire have cheap mail on her vanity? She looked at the top document. Her heart stopped. It was a logo she recognized. It was the logo of the bank that held the mortgage on her house in Greenwich, First National Trust. But the name on the address line was not Chloe Vance. It was Jessica Vance and Marcus Vance. Jessica picked up the paper. Her fingers felt numb. It was a notice of default and acceleration. She read the bold text. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Vance, this letter serves as formal notice that your mortgage loan is in default. You have failed to make payments for the months of March, April, and May. The total amount past due, including late fees and penalties, is $24,300. Jessica felt the room spinning. She read the next paragraph. Furthermore, please be advised that your mortgage debt has been sold. Effective yesterday, the new holder of your note is CV Distressed Assets, LLC. All future payments and negotiations regarding foreclosure must be directed to the new lien holder. Jessica dropped the paper. It floated down to the floor, landing next to her feet. CV Distressed Assets. CV. Chloe Vance. She backed away. She bumped into the island. The glass case rattled. She looked around the room. The Himalaya bag seemed to be laughing at her now. The diamond hardware glittered like cruel eyes. The door to the dressing room opened. I stood there. I was leaning against the doorframe. I had my arms crossed. I was holding my teacup in one hand. I watched her. I watched the color drain from her face until she looked like a ghost. I walked into the room. I walked past her. I bent down and picked up the paper she had dropped. I dusted it off, pretending it was dirty. You should be more careful with your mail, Jessica, I said. This looks important. Jessica stared at me. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You, she whispered. You bought our mortgage. I walked over to the vanity and placed the paper back down. I adjusted it so it was perfectly square with the edge of the table. I bought a bundle of non-performing loans from First National Trust, I said casually. They were looking to offload some toxic assets before the end of the quarter. I bought the whole portfolio for 60 cents on the dollar. I turned and looked at her. Imagine my surprise when I was going through the files and I saw a familiar address. I recited the address from memory. 12 Oak Ridge Drive, Greenwich, Connecticut. The spec home with the hollow doors and the leasing contractor's special marble. Jessica began to cry. Not the angry tears from before. These were tears of total defeat. We are just a little behind," she sobbed. "Marcus had a bad bonus year. We were going to catch up next month." I shook my head. "You are 90 days past due, Jessica. In the banking world, that is not a little behind. That is dead. That is foreclosure territory." I took a step closer to her. The smell of my expensive perfume mixed with the smell of her fear. "You stand in my house and call me a mistress. You call my money dirty. You mock my shoes. You mock my life." I pointed to the paper. "Meanwhile, you haven't paid for the roof over your head in 3 months. You are living in a house you do not own, wearing clothes you charged on credit cards you cannot pay, driving a car that belongs to the bank." I leaned in close to her ear. "So tell me, Jessica, who is the fraud now?" She couldn't answer. She was sobbing into her hands. I walked to the door. "Fix your face," I said. "We have guests, and I want you to come back out to the library and tell Marcus the good news. Tell him that his new landlord is very strict about late payments." I waited. Jessica wiped her face. She looked at the Birkin bag one last time. It was a look of pure longing and despair. Then she looked at the foreclosure notice. She realized then that the distance between us was not just money. It was reality. I lived in the real world where actions had consequences. She lived in a fantasy world that had just been popped. She walked past me. Her head was down. I followed her out. The walk back to the library was the longest walk of her life, and I enjoyed every single step. Jessica walked back into the library like a prisoner returning to her cell. She did not look at Marcus. She did not look at our parents. She walked straight to the far end of the sofa and sat down. She pulled her knees together and stared at the silk rug. She looked smaller than she had 5 minutes ago. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow look of someone who had seen their own obituary. Marcus looked at her. He saw the fear in her eyes, and he knew. He knew she had seen something in the other room that had broken her. He shifted in his seat. The leather of the chair creaked loudly in the silence. I walked to the center of the room. I held a small remote control in my hand. It was milled from a solid block of aluminum. I addressed the room. "We have spent the last hour talking about my finances, about my job, about my home, about my worth." I pressed a button on the remote. On the wall opposite the ocean view, a panel slid open silently. A 100-inch screen emerged from the architectural reveal. It glowed to life with a crisp white light. "But I think it is time we talked about yours," I said. My mother Linda frowned. She put her teacup down. "Chloe, what is this? We are just having a family visit. Why do you have a presentation screen? This isn't a boardroom." I ignored her. I pressed the next button. A spreadsheet appeared on the screen. It was high contrast, black text on white background, easy to read, brutal in its clarity. "This is a comprehensive financial audit of the household of Marcus and Jessica Vance," I said. Marcus stood up. His face was red. "Chloe, stop. You cannot do this. This is private data. Where did you get this? This is illegal." "Sit down, Marcus," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cracked through the room like a whip. "I own the debt collection agency that is currently processing your file. When you buy a debt portfolio, you get the data. It is not illegal. It is due diligence. And right now, I am the only thing standing between you and a sheriff deputy throwing your furniture onto the lawn. So sit down." Marcus sat down. He slumped into the chair, defeated. I pointed to the screen with a laser pointer. A red dot appeared on the first column. "Let us look at the income." The red dot circled the number 250,000. "Marcus, you are a director at Sterling and Finch. Your base salary is $250,000 a year." My father Thomas nodded. He looked relieved. "See," he said, "that is $250,000. That is a lot of money, Chloe. Marcus is doing very well." I turned to my father. "In Iowa, $250,000 is a lot of money, Dad." "In Greenwich, Connecticut, where the average property tax bill is $40,000, it is poverty wages if you are trying to live the lifestyle they are living." I moved the laser dot to the next line. "And Jessica, let us look at your contribution." The dot circled the number 30,000. $30,000, I read aloud. Jessica flinched. She tried to make herself smaller on the sofa. My mother looked confused. "But Jessica is an influencer," she said. "She works with brands. She is always posting about those luxury creams. She told me she makes 6 figures." I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "She is in a multi-level marketing scheme, Mom. She sells overpriced moisturizer to high school friends who feel sorry for her. She buys the inventory up front on credit cards and sells it at a loss. Her net income after expenses is actually negative $4,000. But for the sake of charity, I listed her gross revenue of $30,000. I looked at Jessica. "You are not an influencer, Jessica. You are a customer with a delusion." Jessica did not argue. She just wiped a tear from her cheek. I clicked the remote. The screen changed. A pie chart appeared. It was mostly red. "Now, let us look at the expenses." The red dot danced across the screen. "Total combined income after taxes is roughly $180,000 a year." I paused. "Total annual spending, $600,000. The room went silent. My father took off his glasses and cleaned them as if seeing clearly would change the math. "That is impossible," my mother whispered. "How can they spend 3 times what they make?" I pointed to the list on the right side of the screen. "Let us break it down." I read the items one by one. Each one was a nail in the coffin of their reputation. Item 1, the house, mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance and maintenance, $180,000 a year. That is 100% of their take-home pay, just for the shelter. Item 2, the cars, the Range Rover, Sport and the BMW X5, both leased, both with negative equity rolled over. $3,200 a month. That is nearly $40,000 a year just to look rich at stoplights. Item 3, the club. I looked at Marcus. "You joined the Greenwich Country Club, Marcus. Initiation fee, $60,000. Monthly dues, $2,000. You have played golf there twice in the last year. You are paying $24,000 a year for a locker you don't use." Marcus covered his face with his hands. Item 4, appearance. I looked at Jessica. Designer clothing rentals, hair extensions, Botox, fillers, personal training, $50,000 a year. I turned to my mother. "You asked me why I dress simply, Mom. You asked me why I wear comfortable shoes. This is why. Because I don't need to spend $50,000 a year to convince strangers I have value. Jessica does." I clicked the remote again. A bar graph appeared. It showed a red bar skyrocketing upward. "This is the debt," I said. I walked over to the screen and stood next to the red bar. It was taller than me. $180,000 in consumer credit card debt. My father dropped his glasses. They hit the floor with a clatter. $180,000, he gasped. On credit cards, I nodded. Distributed across 12 cards, Amex Platinum, Chase Sapphire Reserve, Nordstrom Visa, all maxed out, all paying minimum payments. I looked at Marcus. "Do you know what the interest rate is on that debt, Marcus?" He didn't answer. "It is 29%. I answered for him. "You are paying $52,000 a year just in interest. You are working 3 months of every year just to pay the bank for the privilege of being broke." I turned off the laser pointer. I walked back to my chair and sat down. But that is not the worst part. I looked at Jessica. She was staring at me with pleading eyes. She shook her head slightly, begging me not to say it. I clicked the remote one last time. A document appeared on the screen. It was a scan of a legal notice. Notice of default. The words were large and black. Status, pre-foreclosure. My mother let out a small scream. She put her hand over her mouth. "Foreclosure," she choked out. "No, not the house. It is brand new. They just moved in. They haven't made a mortgage payment in 90 days, I said. I looked at the screen. The bank has already started the proceedings. They have hired a legal team to reclaim the asset. They are preparing the eviction notice. I turned to my parents. "You went to a housewarming party last week, but you were actually celebrating a squatting. They don't own that house. The bank owns it. And since I bought the bank debt, I own it." I picked up my teacup. Jessica asked me to be her maid. She wanted me to live in her basement. I took a sip. The irony is that in 30 days, she won't have a basement. She won't have a roof. She won't have a driveway to park that leased car in. I looked at Marcus. He had taken his hands off his face. He looked pale and sick. You said you wanted to help me, Marcus. You offered me a loan at 12%. You wanted to make a profit off your little sister while you were secretly drowning. I leaned forward. That is what offends me. It is not the debt. Plenty of people have debt. It is the arrogance. It is the fact that you stood on a mountain of lies and looked down on me. You judged my reality against your fantasy. I stood up and walked over to Marcus. I placed my hand on the back of his chair. You are a fraud, Marcus. You are a financial advisor who cannot manage a checking account. You are a husband who has lied to his wife about their solvency. You are a son who has lied to his parents about his success. I looked at my father. You made a toast, Dad. You toasted to their ambition. You toasted to the Vance name being on the map. I pointed to the screen, to the foreclosure notice. Well, there it is. The Vance name is on the map, all right. It is on the public foreclosure registry. Anyone with an internet connection can see it. Your neighbors know. Your club members know. My father looked at the screen. He looked old. All the pride he had felt last week had evaporated, leaving him shrunken and gray. He looked at Marcus. Is this true? He asked. His voice was trembling. Tell me she is lying. Tell me this is some sick joke. Marcus looked at his father. He tried to speak, but his voice failed him. He just nodded slowly. My mother started to cry. It was a loud, wailing sound. We told everyone. She sobbed. We told the cousins in Ohio. We told the bridge club. We bragged about you. How could you do this to us? Jessica stood up. She wiped her face. She looked at me with pure hatred. Are you happy now? She screamed. Are you satisfied? You have humiliated us. You have exposed us. Is this what you wanted, to prove you are better than us? No, Jessica, I said calmly. I walked over to the wall and pressed a button. The screen retracted. The data disappeared. I didn't want to prove I am better than you. I wanted to prove that you are not better than me. I walked back to my desk. I picked up a file folder. I didn't bring you here to mock you. I brought you here because I have a decision to make. I opened the folder. Inside was a legal document. As the new owner of your mortgage debt, I have two options. Option A is to proceed with the foreclosure. I can have the sheriff there on Monday. You will be out on the street. Your credit will be ruined for 7 years. You will never work in finance again, Marcus. I looked at them. They were holding their breath. Option B, I said. I pulled out a pen. Option B is that I restructure the loan. I pay off the arrears. I lower the interest rate to something you can actually afford. I save the house. I save your reputation. Marcus looked up. Hope flooded his face. You would do that, he asked. You would save us. I tapped the pen on the desk. I might. But there are conditions. Conditions, Jessica asked. Yes, I said. I looked at the cleaning bucket that was still sitting on the floor where Jessica had dropped it. You wanted an au pair, Jessica. You wanted someone to clean your house and cook your meals. I smiled. I don't need an au pair, but I do need my cars washed. I need my driveway weeded. I need my windows cleaned. And this estate is very large. I looked at Marcus. And I need a junior analyst to organize my filing system. Someone to do the grunt work. Minimum wage, of course. I looked at them both. If you want to keep your house, you are going to work off the debt. Not as family, but as employees. You will report to Elias. He will give you your schedules. I leaned back in my chair. So, who wants to start with the windows? The view is beautiful, but the salt spray makes the glass very dirty, and I hate dirty glass. The silence in the library was absolute. It was the kind of silence that usually follows a bomb blast. My family sat frozen in the debris of their own lies, staring at the foreclosure notice on the screen. Then the sound came. It was a vibration, a harsh buzzing noise against the glass surface of the coffee table. Marcus jumped as if he had been electrocuted. He looked down at his phone. The screen was lit up. The name displayed in bold white letters was Lawrence Sterling. It was the CEO, the man Marcus worshipped, the man Marcus had lied to for years. Marcus reached for the phone. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely grasp the device. He moved his thumb to decline the call. He wanted to send it to voicemail. He wanted to hide. "Don't," I said. My voice stopped his hand in midair. I leaned forward. "Answer it, Marcus," and put it on speaker. Marcus looked at me with terror in his eyes. He shook his head slightly. "Chloe, please," he whispered. "Not now. I can't talk to him now." "Answer it," I repeated. "Or I will call him back myself on my personal line. And if I have to call him back, the conversation will be much worse for you." Marcus swallowed hard. He knew I wasn't bluffing. He pressed the green button. He tapped the speaker icon. He barely got the word "hello" out of his mouth before the voice on the other end exploded into the room. "Marcus, you idiot! What have you done?" Lawrence's sterling voice was not the polished baritone he used in television interviews. It was a guttural roar of pure rage. It distorted slightly through the speaker of the phone. "Mr. Sterling," Marcus stammered. "Sir, I am just at a family gathering. Can I call you back in 5 minutes?" "No, you cannot call me back," Lawrence shouted. "You listen to me, and you listen closely. I am sitting here on a Sunday afternoon looking at an email from the compliance department. Do you know what the email says, Marcus?" Marcus looked at me. I was sipping my tea calmly. "I don't know, sir," Marcus whispered. "It says that the $50 million commitment from Vance Capital Holdings has been rescinded, withdrawn, canceled." My mother gasped. She looked at me with wide eyes. Lawrence continued his tirade. "I just got off the phone with their legal counsel. They didn't just pull the money, Marcus. They blacklisted us. They sent a formal notice that they will never do business with Sterling and Finch as long as you are employed here." Marcus closed his eyes. Tears squeezed out from under his eyelids. "Sir, please, I can explain. It is a misunderstanding. Chloe is my sister-in-law. We are just having a disagreement." "Disagreement," Lawrence laughed. It was a terrifying sound. "This is not a disagreement, Marcus. This is a character assessment. Ms. Vance sent me a dossier. She sent me proof of your personal insolvency." The room went cold. "She sent me your credit report, Marcus. She sent me the foreclosure notice on your house. She sent me the leasing agreements for your cars." Lawrence's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "You are a director of private wealth. Your job is to manage risk. Your job is to be a steward of capital. And yet you are $180,000 in consumer debt. You are living like a fraud. How can I trust you with client money when you cannot even pay your own mortgage?" "Sir," Marcus tried to interrupt. "I have a plan. I was going to—" "Shut up," Lawrence snapped. "There is no plan. There is only the consequences. You are a liability, Marcus. You are a security risk. If the SEC found out I had a bankrupt director managing high net worth accounts, they would fine us millions." I heard the sound of paper tearing in the background. "I am terminating your employment effective immediately." The words hung in the air. Termination. Immediate. Marcus made a choking sound. "Sir, you can't. I have been with the firm for 7 years. I have a family. I have a mortgage." "You don't have a mortgage," Lawrence corrected him. "You have a foreclosure. And as for your 7 years, they are gone. I am scrubbing you from the website. I am revoking your license sponsorship." I heard Lawrence typing furiously on a keyboard. "Security is already at your desk, Marcus. They are packing your personal effects into a box. Do not go to the office. Do not try to log into your email. Your access card has been deactivated. If you set foot in the lobby, I will have you arrested for trespassing." "Wait," Marcus pleaded. "Please, just give me a week. Let me fix this. Chloe is right here. Let me talk to her. I can fix this." "It is too late," Lawrence said. The CEO paused. His voice shifted from anger to cold business logic. "Ms. Vance told me something else, Marcus. She told me you tried to loan her money at 12% interest. She told me you tried to profit off your own family." There was a silence on the line. "That is disgusting," Lawrence said. "It shows a fundamental lack of ethics. We are bankers, Marcus, not loan sharks. You are a disgrace to this firm. Sir, you are fired, Marcus. Goodbye." The line went dead. The beep of the disconnected call echoed in the silent library. Marcus stared at the phone. The screen went black. He didn't move for a long time. He just sat there staring at his own reflection in the dark glass of the phone. Then gravity seemed to take hold of him. He collapsed. It wasn't a dramatic faint. It was a structural failure. His spine seemed to dissolve. He slumped forward in the chair, his head dropping into his hands. And then it happened. His arm hit the edge of the glass coffee table. The watch. The Patek Philippe Nautilus. The watch he leased for $2,000 a month to prove he was a success. It hit the glass with a loud, dry crack. Thwack! The sound was sickeningly final. I looked at the watch. The crystal face had shattered against the edge of the table. A spiderweb of cracks obscured the blue dial. Marcus pulled his arm back. He looked at the broken watch. He touched the jagged glass with a trembling finger. "It is broken," he whispered. He looked up at me. His eyes were red and empty. "It is a lease," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't pay for the insurance. I have to pay the full replacement value if it is damaged." I nodded slowly. $110,000, I said. "That is the replacement value clause in the Kronos lease contract. I know because I read their terms of service when I considered buying the company." Marcus let out a sob. "I don't have it. I don't have $100,000. I don't have a job." He looked at Jessica. Jessica was sitting frozen on the sofa. She wasn't looking at Marcus. She was looking at the blank screen where the foreclosure notice had been. "He is fired," she whispered. She turned to Marcus. Her eyes were wide with panic. "You are fired! You actually lost the job! Marcus, how do we pay the club dues next month? How do we pay the lease on the Rover?" Marcus laughed. It was a hysterical sound. "The club," he choked out. "Jessica, I just lost my career. I just got blacklisted by the biggest bank in New York. And you are worried about the country club." He stood up. He was swaying slightly. He looked at me. "You did this," he said. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You planned this. You waited until we were here. You waited until the tea was poured. You waited until I felt safe." I picked up my teacup. "I didn't plan your debt, Marcus. I didn't plan your spending habits. I didn't plan your lies." I took a sip. "I just turned on the lights. You're the one who built the house of cards. Don't blame the wind when it falls down." Marcus looked around the room. He looked at the walls of glass. He looked at the ocean. He looked at the wealth that surrounded him. He realized then that he had never been a player in this game. He had been a pawn, and now he was off the board. My father Thomas stood up. He looked shaky. "Chloe," he said, that was excessive. You cost him his livelihood. He is your brother-in-law." "He tried to exploit me, Dad," I said coldly. "He tried to trap me in debt. He tried to turn me into a servant." I stood up and walked to the window. A man who preys on his family does not deserve a livelihood in finance. I did the world a favor. I protected his future clients from his incompetence. I turned back to them. "Marcus is now unemployed. Jessica has a negative income, and you are all sitting in a house owned by the woman you called a failure." I looked at Marcus, who was cradling his broken watch like a wounded bird. "The offer stands, Marcus." He looked up. "What offer?" "The job," I said. I pointed to the window. "The glass is still dirty. And since you don't have an income anymore, I suggest you start thinking about how you are going to pay off your debt to me." Marcus stared at me. The realization washed over him. He wasn't a director anymore. He wasn't a rising star. He was my debtor. And I was the only bank left in town. He looked at the broken watch. He looked at his wife, who was weeping silently. He looked at his parents, who looked old and defeated. Then he looked at the cleaning bucket on the floor, the yellow bucket Jessica had brought to mock me. He walked over to it. He picked it up. His hand gripped the cheap plastic handle. "What are you doing?" Jessica screamed. Marcus put that down. He looked at her. His eyes were dead. "I'm going to work, Jessica," he said. He looked at me. "Where is the squeegee?" he asked. I smiled. "Ask Elias. He is in the kitchen." Marcus turned and walked out of the library. He carried the yellow bucket. He walked with a limp in his step. The arrogance was gone. The swagger was gone. All that was left was a man with a bucket walking to clean the windows of the sister he had underestimated. I watched him go. Then I turned to Jessica. "Your turn," I said. Jessica looked at me with horror. "No," she whispered. I won't I can't. You can, I said, and you will. I pointed to the phone on the table. Or I call the sheriff, and you can explain to your Instagram followers why you are being evicted on a live stream. Jessica looked at the phone. She looked at the door where Marcus had disappeared. She stood up slowly. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. Her voice was barely audible. I looked at her shoes, the expensive heels she had bought to impress people she didn't like. "Take off your shoes," I said. "The floors in the foyer need polishing, and I don't want you scuffing them." Jessica bent down. She unbuckled her shoes. She placed them on the silk rug. She stood up in her bare feet. She looked vulnerable. She looked real. She walked toward this door. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't walking to show off. She was walking to survive. Jessica stood there on the silk rug. Her bare feet looked pale against the intricate patterns of the wool. She was trembling slightly. Her husband was gone. He was somewhere in the vast house holding a squeegee and a bucket reduced to the manual labor he had mocked only an hour ago. I looked at Jessica. I looked at the woman who had spent her entire life trying to make me feel small. She looked like a statue of misery. Her expensive dress was wrinkled. Her makeup was ruined. Her posture was broken. "Do you remember our conversation in your hallway last week, Jessica?" I asked. She looked up at me. Her eyes were red. "I remember," she whispered. "You were so generous," I said. My voice was smooth and cold like polished glass. "You offered me a home. You told me I could live in your basement. You said it was a suite, but we both know it was a storage room with a rug in it." I walked over to the window and looked out at the ocean. "You said I should be grateful. You said it was better than the hole I was living in. You wanted to move me into the dark so you could shine brighter." I turned back to face her. "Well, the tables have turned, Jessica, and they have turned violently." I picked up the foreclosure file from the desk. According to the deed transfer I finalized this morning, the property at 12 Oak Ridge Drive is now under the management of CV Distressed Assets. That means I am your landlord. Jessica flinched as if I had slapped her. "And here is the problem," I said. "I ran a background check on the tenants. That is you and Marcus. And I found that you are high risk. You have no income. You have massive debt. And frankly, I do not like your attitude." I dropped the file back onto the desk. It made a heavy thud. "So I am making a management decision. I do not have a habit of letting strangers live in my properties for free, especially strangers who insult the owner." Jessica took a step forward. Her hands were shaking. "What are you saying, Chloe?" she asked. Her voice was thin and brittle. "I am saying you are evicted," I said. The word hung in the room. Evicted. It was a dirty word. A word for poor people. A word for failures. It was not a word for Jessica Vance. "You have 30 days, I continued. "That is the legal minimum I am required to give you. I could have petitioned for an expedited removal based on the damage you have done to the property value, but I am feeling generous." 30 days. Jessica gasped. "But where will we go? We have nowhere to go. We have no money. Marcus just lost his job." "That is not my problem," I said. "You have 30 days to find a new place to live. I suggest you start looking at those rental listings in the bad neighborhoods you used to make fun of. You might find something in your budget there." I paused. I let the reality sink in. "And there is one more thing," I added. I pointed a finger at her. "Do not think about stripping the house. Do not think about taking the furniture. Do not think about taking the electronics. Do not even think about taking the curtains." Jessica blinked. "What?" "The furniture," I said. "I audited your credit card statements, remember? You bought that furniture on credit. You bought the televisions on credit. You even bought the silverware on credit." I leaned forward. "Those credit cards are in default. The banks have placed liens on the collateral. And since I bought the debt, I own the collateral." I smiled. It was a smile devoid of any warmth. "That sectional sofa you love so much. Mine, the dining table. Mine, the 70-inch television. Mine. You leave with your clothes and your personal effects. Everything else stays. If I find a single fork missing, I will file theft charges, and I will prosecute." Jessica let out a sob, a deep, guttural sound of despair. "You are stripping us," she cried. "You are taking everything. We will have nothing. We will be on the street with just our clothes. You are leaving with exactly what you earned," I said, "which is nothing." My mother, Linda, stood up. She had been sitting on the sofa in stunned silence, but now she couldn't take it anymore. The mother bear instinct kicked in. But it was a twisted instinct. She wasn't protecting her cubs from a predator. She was protecting them from the consequences of their own actions. "Chloe, stop this!" she shouted. She walked over to Jessica and put her arm around her. She glared at me. "This has gone too far," she said. Her voice was shaking with indignation. "You have made your point. You have shown us you are rich. You have humiliated Marcus. You have terrified Jessica. Congratulations, you won." She took a breath. "But you cannot do this. You cannot kick your own sister out on the street. You cannot take her furniture. That is cruel. That is evil." My father Thomas stood up too. He nodded in agreement. "Your mother is right, Chloe," he said. His voice was stern, the voice he used when I was a child and I had broken a rule. "Business is business, but family is family. We are your blood. You cannot treat strangers better than you treat your own kin." He walked toward me. He tried to look authoritative, but he just looked tired. "You are going to fix this," he commanded. "You are going to give Marcus his job back. You're going to call Lawrence Sterling and tell him it was a mistake. And you are going to let them stay in the house until they get back on their feet." He pointed at me. "You have $50 million in cash, Chloe. You can afford to help them. It wouldn't even dent your bank account. It is the right thing to do." I looked at them. I looked at the three of them standing there, a united front of entitlement. I felt a cold fire burning in my chest. This was it. This was the core of the rot. I laughed. It was a low, dark sound that made my father step back. "Family," I repeated. I walked around the desk. I moved slowly. I wanted them to feel every second of this. "You use that word like a shield," I said. "You use it when you need something. You use it when you are afraid." I stopped in front of my father. I looked him in the eye. "Where was this family spirit last Sunday, Dad?" He blinked. "What?" "Last Sunday," I said. "At the housewarming party." I turned to my mother. "Where was the family when I walked in? Did you offer me a seat at the head of the table? Did you make a toast to my hard work?" "No." I answered my own question. I sat on a plastic folding chair. The room went silent. "Do you remember the chair, Mom?" I asked. My mother looked down. She fidgeted with her pearls. There were not enough seats at the main table. She mumbled, "We didn't expect you to stay for dinner." "You didn't expect me to stay," I repeated. "I drove 2 hours to celebrate with you. And you put me on a plastic chair in the corner, like a child, like a servant." I looked at Jessica. "And you laughed. You and Marcus. You clinked your crystal glasses, and you laughed at me sitting on that plastic chair. You took a picture of me and posted it on your story with the caption, 'Family Charity.'" Jessica sobbed. "I was just joking. It was just a joke." "It wasn't a joke to me," I said. I turned back to my father. And then came the dessert. And the job offer. I stared at him. "You sat there, Dad. You sat there drinking your wine while your son-in-law offered to loan me money at predatory rates. You sat there while your daughter tried to hire me as a maid." I took a step closer to him. "Did you stand up then? Did you say, 'Stop, this is family'? Did you say you cannot treat your sister like that?" My father opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked trapped. "No," I said. "You didn't. You nodded. You smiled. You told me it was a good opportunity. You told me I should learn to be humble." I walked back to my desk. I picked up the deed to my house. "You were perfectly happy to watch me be humiliated. You were perfectly happy to watch me scrub floors. You were perfectly happy to see me live in a basement." I slammed the deed down on the desk. "But now that the shoe is on the other foot, now that it is your precious Jessica who has to scrub, now that it is your golden boy Marcus who is broke, now suddenly we are family. Now suddenly blood matters." I looked at them with disgust. "That is not love, Mom. That is hypocrisy." I pointed at the door. "You define family by who has the power. When I was poor, I was a burden. Now that I am rich, I am a savior." I shook my head. "Well, I am neither. I am just a businesswoman, and I am closing a bad account." My mother was crying openly now, huge racking sobs that shook her body. "Chloe, please," she begged. Don't be like this. We love you. We have always loved you. Stop lying, I shouted. My voice echoed off the glass walls. It was the first time I had raised my voice all day, and it terrified them. You love the idea of me. You love the version of me that makes you look good. You don't know me. I walked over to the window. I looked out at the vast ocean. I needed to look at something clean. I have spent 10 years building this empire. I worked 18-hour days. I took risks that would give Marcus a heart attack. I built this alone, without your help, without your belief, without your family support. I turned back to them. So don't come into my house and tell me what I owe you. I don't owe you anything. I paid my dues. I paid them in that plastic chair. I paid them when you forgot my birthday. I paid them when you told me I wasn't good enough. I looked at Jessica. The eviction stands, 30 days. I looked at my parents. And if you want to help them so much, Dad, why don't you take them in? You have a guest room. You can let them live with you. You can pay their debts. You can support their lifestyle. My father looked at the floor. I knew why. He didn't have the money. He had spent his retirement trying to keep up appearances just like them. He was barely afloat himself. We don't have the space, he muttered. No, I said. You don't have the money. I walked back to my chair and sat down. I smoothed my skirt. I returned to my calm, stoic center. The explosion was over. Now only the ice remained. You have 30 days, Jessica. Use them wisely. I picked up my phone. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a conference call with Tokyo in 10 minutes, and I need to check on my new window washer. I want to make sure he isn't leaving streaks. Get out. I didn't look up as they left. I heard the shuffling of feet. I heard the soft crying of my mother. I heard the defeated breathing of my father. They walked out of the glass library. They walked out of my sanctuary. They walked out into a world that was suddenly very cold and very expensive. And I sat there alone, surrounded by my books, surrounded by my ocean, surrounded by the silence that I had bought and paid for. I was not cruel. I was just correct. And sometimes being correct is the most devastating thing in the world. 3 months passed. The fall of the House of Vance was not a slow decline. It was a sudden vertical drop. It happened with the mathematical precision of a controlled demolition. The auction of 12 Oak Ridge Drive took exactly 14 minutes. I know because I watched the live stream from my office in Manhattan. The bank, which is now a subsidiary of my holding company, put the property on the block at 9 in the morning. The opening bid was $2 million. There were no takers. The reputation of the house had been ruined. The local real estate blogs had picked up the story of the foreclosure. They called it the House of Cards. The neighbors had complained about the lack of maintenance. The lawn was dead. The pool was green. Finally, a developer bought it for $1.8 million. He bought it for the land value. He plans to tear down the spec home with the hollow doors and the leasing contractor marble. He is going to erase every trace of Jessica and Marcus' dream. The sale price did not cover the debt. There was a deficiency judgment of $1.4 million. Marcus declared personal bankruptcy 2 weeks later. I saw his file. It was tragic. He had listed his assets: a leased car that had been repossessed, a collection of suits that no longer fit him, and a broken Patek Philippe watch that he still owed $100,000 on. He tried to get another job in finance. He applied to every firm in New York. He applied to boutique funds in Connecticut. He even applied to a credit union in New Jersey. But the blacklist is real. Lawrence Sterling is a man of his word. When a background check was run on Marcus, his name lit up like a Christmas tree. High risk, insolvent, unethical. The last I heard, Marcus was working as a shift manager at a car rental agency near Newark Airport. He wears a polyester uniform now. He spends his days checking other people out in cars he used to pretend to own. He scans their credit cards and sees the approval codes and remembers a time when he thought he was a king. Jessica did not handle the transition well. The divorce was ugly. They fought over debt, not assets. They fought over who was responsible for the ruin. Marcus blamed Jessica for her spending. Jessica blamed Marcus for his failure. They are currently separated. Jessica moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Bridgeport. It is not the nice part of Bridgeport. It is the part where the streetlights do not work and the sirens never stop. She tried to pivot her career. She decided that if she could not be a rich wife, she would be a victim. She started live streaming on TikTok. She told a story about how she was scammed by a family member. She tried to paint me as the villain. But the internet is smarter than Jessica. People did their research. They found the foreclosure records. They found the court documents. They found the truth. Her live stream last Tuesday was a disaster. I watched it. She was trying to sell counterfeit designer bags. She held up a fake Chanel flap bag and claimed it was vintage. The comments section was brutal. One user wrote, "Is that the bag you bought with your unpaid mortgage money?" Another wrote, "We know your sister owns the bank. Stop lying." Jessica started crying on camera. Her mascara ran down her face. She screamed at the phone. She called her viewers jealous haters. Then her internet connection cut out because she had missed the bill payment. It was a pathetic end to a pathetic delusion. My parents, Linda and Thomas, suffered the collateral damage. They had co-signed for one of Marcus' loans. It was a small personal loan they took out to help him with the down payment on the house. They thought they were investing in the family legacy. They were actually investing in a sinking ship. When Marcus defaulted, the creditors came for them. They had to sell their retirement home in Florida. They sold it at a loss in a down market. They used the proceeds to settle the debt. Now they live in a rental apartment in Queens. It is ironic. It is almost poetic. It is located 3 blocks away from the studio apartment they used to mock me for. It has the same linoleum floors. It has the same smell of other people cooking. It has the same view of a brick wall. My mother called me yesterday. She asked if I could come visit. She said she made a pot roast. She said she missed me. I told her I was busy. I told her I had a board meeting. I told her the truth. I sent her a gift basket instead. It contained high-quality tea and a card. The card simply said, "Enjoy the view. It builds character." I stood on the balcony of my estate in Southampton. The wind was whipping off the Atlantic Ocean. It was cold and salty and clean. I took a deep breath. I looked down at the table in front of me. A contract was waiting for my signature. It was not a deed for a house. It was a purchase agreement for a skyscraper. 432 Park Avenue, one of the tallest residential towers in the Western Hemisphere. My holding company, CV Capital, had just negotiated a controlling interest in the building management. The deal was valued at $450 million. I picked up my pen. It was a heavy fountain pen. I signed my name, Chloe Vance. The ink dried instantly in the sea breeze. I put the pen down. I looked out at the horizon where the gray water met the gray sky. I did not feel happy in the way people expect. I did not feel giddy. I did not want to jump up and down. I felt weightless. I felt the absolute absence of noise. For 30 years, my life had been filled with the noise of my family, their criticism, their judgment, their constant demands that I justify my existence. They were a radio that never turned off playing a station called "You Are Not Good Enough." Now the radio was silent. I had unplugged it. I thought about Marcus scanning rental cars. I thought about Jessica selling fake bags in a dark apartment. I thought about my parents staring at a brick wall in Queens. I did not hate them. Hate takes energy. Hate is an investment, and they were no longer worth the capital. They were simply bad assets that I had liquidated. I picked up my phone. I had a text message from Lawrence Sterling. It read, "Deal closed. Congratulations on the tower. Dinner next week to discuss the acquisition of Sterling and Finch competitors." I smiled. My family laughed at me because I didn't have a house like theirs. They laughed because my car was old and my shoes were flat. They measured their worth in square footage and leased leather. They didn't know that while they were playing house, I was playing Monopoly. And in Monopoly, the game ends when one person owns everything. I walked to the edge of the balcony. I looked down at the waves crashing against the rocks. They laughed at me because I was silent. They thought silence was weakness. They thought silence was submission. They didn't know that silence is the sound of compounding interest. They didn't know that while they were screaming for attention, I was quietly buying the land they were standing on. Now they know. Now they have nothing but noise. And I have the world. Họ cười tôi vì tôi không có một ngôi nhà giống họ. Tôi cười họ vì họ không biết rằng tôi sở hữu cả thành phố mà họ đang sống. If you are watching this and you have a family member who makes you feel small, listen to me. Do not argue with them. Do not try to prove them wrong with words. Do not show them your bank account. Do not try to win their approval. You will never win their approval because their judgment is not about you. It is about their own insecurity. The only way to win is to outgrow them. Build your empire in silence. Let them laugh. Let them think you are failing. Let them underestimate you. Being underestimated is the greatest competitive advantage you can have. It is a cloak of invisibility. It allows you to move mountains while they are busy looking at molehills. Let them be loud. Let them lease their luxury. Let them post their fake lives on social media. You just keep working. You just keep buying. You just keep owning. And one day, when the bill comes due, and the bill always comes due, you will be the one holding the pen. If this story of financial vengeance satisfied your soul, I want you to do something for me. Go to the comments section right now and type 3 words. Silence is golden. Type it to remind yourself that your power is in your privacy. Type it to claim your future. And if you want to see exactly how I take the $50 million I saved from Marcus and use it to execute a hostile takeover of his old firm, then you need to subscribe. In the next episode, I walk into Sterling and Finch, not as a client, but as the new majority shareholder. And trust me, you do not want to miss the look on Lauren's face when I fire the board. Hit the like button, hit the bell. And remember, the best revenge is not just living well, it is owning the building they live in. I am Chloe Vance, and class is dismissed.